On today's Locked On Predators podcast, we are talking with Robyn Leano from Locked On Coyotes, an interesting crossover for one of the Preds' Central Division rivals, a Central Division rival that always seems to have the Preds number. An interesting talk, including the Coyotes' move to Arizona State and why I think the Coyotes might surprise a couple of teams in the Central Division this year. An interesting conversation coming up that is today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor on theforecheck.com. Normally I have a partner in crime, Ann Kimmel, but she has the day off. Also want to mention today's show brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite teams this offseason. BetOnline, where the game starts. Today, we are breaking back into our crossover vault. We have a conversation with Robyn Leano from Locked On Coyotes. Yeah, the last time the Preds and Coyotes got together, it didn't exactly go too well. Coyotes kind of have a knack for ruining the Preds' happiness. So that's a topic of conversation we'll bring up. Why do the Preds keep losing to the Coyotes? And also Arizona's a little bit of an interesting team. We'll get into why I think that, maybe why they might surprise some people, and who's going to finish last in the Central, the Coyotes or the Blackhawks. All topics that we get into. So without further ado, here is Robyn. Well, we're continuing chats with our Central Division frenemies, and today we got Robyn from Locked On, as our own Terry Crisp would say, Coyotes. Robyn, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to be on. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be talking with you. We were saying off the air that I got a chance to talk with Ann a couple of times, but not with you. So it's glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I wish we could start off on a cheery note, a jovial note, but I kind of have a bone to pick with you and your team. So end of April, there was a game. We went up 4-0. We just wanted to be a nice, easy thing, send the crowd home, early. Everybody kind of gets to kick back and knock off work a little bit early. Just nice, easy game. And you guys took advantage of our hospitality, our good offer, and decided to come back and win the game 5-4 and kind of ruin the rest of our season. So my question for you is, what did we do? Like, what did we ever do to the Coyotes that you guys keep sort of ruining the Predators' fun here over the past few years? What did we do to you?
I don't know if I can really answer that question. I think the Coyotes they just play well against the Predators on some occasions, on those weird games in which like it matters, not necessarily matters for the Coyotes, but it matters for the Preds.
Obviously, for the Preds.
Obviously, there are some games that mattered for both. Obviously, I can look back to some postseason games in the last, decade. But
well, you don't need to do that either. Yeah, it's like I feel like we kind of maybe pissed off Oleg Tverdovsky on some lower Broadway bar back in 2000 or something like that. And there's just been a grudge ever since, or who Nikolai Javy-Bulin got bad hot chicken. I don't know. There seems to be some sort of long-standing grudge there for the Coyotes end towards us. Let's talk hockey. So, obviously you're host of the Coyotes. You're a big fan of the Coyotes. Obviously the big elephant this year is the arena situation. You guys are playing at Arizona State. That's been much talked about in all corners of the hockey fan base. Now that we're closer to the season, where does that stand with the fans? Are fans starting to embrace a little bit? Is it still like, oh my God, what is this?
So there's a mix on this side, over here in Arizona on the feelings here. There's a lot of people that are excited for it. Of course it's a small arena, but it's intimate, so you're going to have a lot of people there. You're going to, it's going to be absolutely packed. all these fans are going to be the diehard fans, those who are willing to spend the money because the prices are out. They're expensive tickets.
Yeah.
So these guys are going to be diehard fans, the ones who are willing to spend that money. Um, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be loud and it's going to be unique. Very rarely are players going to say, like, hey, I played in a barn this small that's packed with, lots of loyal hockey fans in Arizona. Of course, and the downside is it's so damn expensive that you are turning away a decent amount of fans.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you said tickets were actually like up, or at least ticket revenue was up this year. I think the Coyotes
Mhm.
came out and said that. So
Yeah, the season ticket revenue was higher than it was last year, and I think it's yeah, it's pretty damn high this upcoming year, and it makes sense.
yeah,
Obviously the price of the tickets are higher because the demand is,
mhm,
I mean, the demand is higher and the supply is lower. That's how it works. And then I think in general, the other aspect of it in general, the demand being higher as well, is the fact that, and I've been saying this on many shows as possible to kind of, you know, put that out there and let people know they are officially on the right side of the valley. The west side of the valley, where Glendale was, there was nothing there. I mean, obviously there was, there's the Arizona Cardinals play right, right next to there.
mhm,
There's a decent amount of stuff to do in Glendale, but the majority of the population in Arizona, in the valley, in the Phoenix area, is in the east side of the valley. Scottsdale, Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler, all that area. That and Tempe, of course, because that's where they're playing, and that's where all the fans are. So
yeah,
like, no fan on a freaking Wednesday night wanted to go to Glendale to watch a team that sucked. But
yeah.
now they're here in the East Valley. It makes more sense. So people were going to be willing to go to the games a lot more.
Yeah, it does seem a little bit more accessible, and it does seem like, maybe there's a shift back towards putting it closer to the fans. I know it sounds like there's a push to build an arena long term in Tempe. I hope it does, because, obviously Nashville fans, we went through our own relocation scare back in, 2007. A lot of people didn't think hockey was working in Nashville at the time, wanted to see us move, and you saw what happened, when they invested on the team on the ice, when they started, marketing better, when some of these people who went to games as kids, 9, 10 year olds back in season one, 15 years later, they're adults putting their money and bringing their kids to games. And it just seems like there needs to be some time to grow. And I hope that's, is what happens for you guys out in the desert, because, I remember back in, early 2000 or early 2000s, late 90s, like Keith Kachuk, Jeremy Roenick, Rick Tocchet, like the Coyotes were
Mhm.
fun, and there were always so like wild amount of crowds there, and the whiteouts during the playoffs, and it was just fun to watch. So, I would love to see the Coyotes kind of come back, have that same energy, and really, kind of come back with a force.
And that's the hope, that's the hope. Obviously, the arena that they're trying to build in Tempe is absolutely beautiful. If none of your listeners have seen the renderings, you can easily check it out. I think it's like coyotesandtempe.com or something like that. You can see the renderings. Absolutely freaking gorgeous development they're trying to put up. And that loss solidifies them in the valley for 30 years if it gets built. Um, and that's already a good thing on that side. Two, the way that Bill Armstrong is building this team, obviously right now, this year they're gonna suck, but
Yeah.
the way they're building this team is gonna be pretty cool because look at their recent draft picks. Dylan Gunther, who has been making a name for himself in juniors. Logan Cooley, out of this last draft, one of the best American players drafted in this previous draft. Connor Geeky. Obviously, drafting the son of Shane Doan and Josh Doan, who's currently playing at Arizona State. Obviously Josh Doan to a little bit of a lesser extent, but those other three players I named, those are future superstars for the Coyotes. And you have Clayton Keller, who might eventually be the future captain, or Lawson Krause, one of those players. Like, this is going to be a team that's going to be exciting in a few years' time. And of course, there's a joke that we're going to say Austin Matthews is going to come home because, Scottsdale kid might as well.
Yeah, he's going to be the 2024-25 version of John Tavares going to Toronto. It all comes full circle. But you mentioned it. I actually love what the Coyotes have been doing, and like you mentioned, I don't think anybody really has high expectations for them this year, but they are building something cool. And there's a lot of really good young players in there. Dylan Genther, when me and Ann did a show last week, I picked him as one of my Central Division breakout candidates if he makes the team this year. And that might be kind of an exciting thing to watch. She said Lawson Krause, she picks another big year for him. Who are a couple of other players that, maybe, with some of the veterans gone, maybe either ready to take that next step or kind of really break into the spotlight this season?
I'm going to go ahead and say JJ Mosher, defenseman. He was drafted in this 2021 draft. I was an overager. And he started the year in Tucson, and then because of how injured the Arizona Coyotes defense was, Mosher gets called up and instantly surpasses some of the other defensemen. It's like that got called up. It's like, oh yeah, Cam Dineen's like, okay, well, we can send him down. Dyson Mail, we can send him back down. Kyle Capobianco was sitting there and got surpassed by JJ Mosher, and Capobianco was the guy who had a lot more hopes. And of course, now he's left over and playing for another division rival in Winnipeg. But JJ Mosher is gonna be awesome. Like, I saw him play last year because I lived in Tucson for the last 7 years. Now I'm in the Valley in Mesa, and he looks good. And I'm so excited to see what he's gonna bring out.
Yeah. And there's other guys too. I was a big Shane Gostisbehere fan back in the day when he was with Union, and I was glad to see him have a big bounce back year last year. I love to see it. The other guy I have to ask about is Jacob Chikrin. It seems like he has been the center of trade rumors for, God, what year is it? 20. Yeah. For at least like 3-4 years now. It seems like even since he broke into the league, it's kind of been a matter of if. Obviously, the Coyotes control his contract. What's his future? Do you see a move happening anytime soon? Or is this going to be a situation where, okay, we're going to hold on to him unless somebody absolutely blows us away with an offer? And then we'll see where he is in his free agent year.
Yeah, that's it seems to be the idea that they're holding on to him for now. There was the idea that was pushed forward before the draft. It's like, okay, if he does not get traded before the draft, then we don't see him getting traded before training camp. And if that doesn't happen, then he will stay on the team until at least the trade deadline. When by then, who knows? Because the Coyotes could be going through a whole different direction. Maybe the value goes down, maybe whatever. But the Coyotes are playing ransom on his value. Like, I think they have a set value of what they want, and no team has met that expectation. Eventually, someone will, and I think that's what their hope is. Someone will eventually bend, and will be like, okay, we'll take this deal. Because that's what the Coyotes need. Obviously, yeah, it would suck to see Jacob Chikrin go, but with the future, I mean, their defense right now is like obviously not a lot now, but in a few years now, it's going to be stacked. They've got a lot of people down there. And of course, the rest of the team, like we mentioned, Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz and Lawson Krause and all those guys. Like, it's about time that we figure something out with them. Who knows what's going to happen though? It's just like, we don't know.
Welcome to the NHL, where the trade circles and trade winds shift every couple weeks, it seems. Speaking of, we had kind of our own trade scare with Philip Forsberg. He's now part of our team, so I know your Coyotes listeners probably want to hear a little bit about that. I also want to get your take on some bold predictions for the Coyotes this year. But first, I want to take a second and mention today's show brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all the latest football developments, both NFL and college, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this week's slate of games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, everything from live betting, esports, and scores. They just put out a bunch of futures on this year's NHL season. So if you want to check that out, go for it. BetOnline.net is also the fastest and easiest way to check in on your favorite scores, events, MLB, MMA, boxing, golf, whatever you have. Go check it out. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and happening right now. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Robyn, I know your listeners are probably itching to hear some info on the Preds this year. It's another Central Division rival. So what do you got?
I think a couple things, and I think you mentioned right before the break, talking about Philip Forsberg, and I was looking at his contract too. How does that how does that work? I mean, he's getting paid a lot of money, right? That's how has he done, been in the last couple years, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to know that.
Well, obviously on ice last year was pretty great for Philip Forsberg. 84 points was his career high. And then the whole saga with his contract is now in the books. So that's another great thing for him and for Preds fans going into this season. I think, obviously the contract situation played out how it did. I think it was like a week before unrestricted free agency open is when all of it kind of came to a head and the deal was finally done. But it didn't really feel like there was a sense of Philip Forsberg's going on the open market. It kind of more felt of a situation like, he wants to stay here. The Preds want him to stay here. Let's just figure out what the contract situation is going to be like. It's not like Johnny Gaudreau where he wanted to play closer to home. It's not like Ryan Suter 10 years ago where it just felt like he kind of wasn't all in on where the Preds were at the time. It seemed like Forsberg was all in, wanted to be part of this team. And so they got that done. And then, obviously he signs the deal he did, $8.5 million a year for 8 years. So that whole thing he did last year where he put up the career high numbers, he's now going to be expected to do that again and again and again for the next handful of seasons throughout his prime. So that's going to be the big question mark is, can he handle that extra expectation, that extra responsibility?
Yeah, that's always been a big question when it comes to big contracts like that, and that's, when, for example, when Clayton Keller got his contract, he didn't meet it for a second. Then, obviously different changes and he does. A couple other ones I'm actually looking at too, and I'm looking actually back down on Cat Friendly, looking back at non-roster. I get reminded of the fact that the Nashville Predators drafted Joakim Kemmel, and I have to ask about him and maybe like if you've seen anything about him, because he was one of the top 10 prospects in this previous draft. So obviously there was some name around it. Not so much with the Coyotes, but still his name carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, I think we were just as surprised that Kemmel is where he is wound up with us as I think everybody else in the NHL is surprised. I mean, our buddy Eric Dene, if you haven't checked out his work, it's on the Future OTF on Twitter. One of the best prospects writers around the NHL period. So check out his work. He had Kemmel in his top 10. Like he and a lot of other scouts did too. So it was surprising that he fell to us, but I'm glad he did. He's playing overseas right now. Good start in Sweden. He was very impressive when the Predators had their development camp earlier this summer. Obviously, he's not taking part in rookie camp, but he's off to a strong start overseas in Sweden. And, he's got a good shot. He's got good speed. I think that the thing is that the Preds fans are just going to have a little bit of patience. I think a lot of people kind of see, his shot ability, a lot of his offensive skills, a lot of his speed, and think this is a guy that's going to be like, maybe an instant contributor end of this year, next year. I don't see that. I think he's going to probably be in Sweden this year and next year, and probably isn't going to come over here till he's 20. But so far, what we've seen from him has been very, very positive, and the Preds definitely got another blue chipper in the prospect line.
Who else from the team that should we pay attention to on the potential breakout candidates for Nashville? Because there are some names I recognize, but also like it definitely seems like, some guys are new to the roster.
Yeah. One guy I think everybody should watch out for is Phil Thomasino. This was the Predators' first round pick back in 2019. That was the big storyline in last season's training camp was he going to make the team? He did. The big question was he going to stay on the team? He did, and he really got better as the season went along. Even though he was kind of buried on the third and fourth line last year, whenever he was on the ice, it just seemed like his line was always firing on all cylinders. I mean, he made Michael McCarron and Matt Luff look like top line wingers when they were on the ice with Phil Thomasino. This year, Thomasino's added a little bit of weight, added a little bit of strength. He's probably going to wind up in the Predators' top 6, if I had to guess. And if he did, this is somebody who went on a tear at the end of last year, quietly wound up with 30-plus points. This is a guy that I think can break through, maybe have a 60-point season this year, and really kind of put himself in the upper echelon of good top 6 wingers in another year or so. So I'd have say that the big one is Phil Thomasino. That's somebody that I would say look out for.
Absolutely. And there's not really much else you got to do. I have on my list. I'm trying to think. Trying to see what else is on here, but
let me add a breakout candidate for you. And this is a guy that I think broke out last year. He actually wound up on the NHL's all rookie defense team as a 25-year-old, which that's a different topic for another day. Alexander Carrier. This was a guy, he was drafted all the way back in 2015, made his NHL debut before the Predators even made the Stanley Cup playoff or the Stanley Cup finals. So this is a guy who has been around the organization for a while, didn't really get his first chance to break through until last season, the lockout shortened year. Last year was his his first full-time year with the team. And he wound up being a very impressive defenseman, played 20 minutes a night. And I think he showed some glimpses of offensive skill, very good puck mover. And I think now that he's surrounded by a little bit more talent, especially in the Preds middle 6, and especially with the addition of Ryan McDonough on the blue line, I think he is going to be somebody who takes his game even further this year. Maybe not unlike Devin Tays did last year for the Colorado Avalanche. Kind of becomes the next really strong number 2 guy.
Absolutely. Another last question that I want to ask, and it's more of just like a generalized question regarding players, and it's regarding now a minor league player,
Mm-hmm.
Luke Prokop.
Yeah.
What can we say about him? Because obviously, there was a lot of news around him, and in his coming out, which is absolutely awesome. Is he set to play for? Is it Milwaukee?
I would assume he's with Milwaukee. He does have the option to go back to juniors just because of his age situation and all that. But talking to Eric Dene and kind of the vibe you get around the Preds, he doesn't have a lot left to prove in junior. So it would be mildly surprised if he doesn't play in Milwaukee this year. Obviously, we celebrated Luke Prokop a lot last year, both for his coming out and really after he did that, he had such a great breakthrough season. It was something great to see, something great to celebrate. Now it's, for lack of a better term, it's now he's kind of just got to become a normal player. He's got the sort of aura around him is the first openly gay player to be part of an NHL team, which is, great, something he's going to kind of be in the history books for a long time. But it's also, you also have to play hockey, and that's going to kind of be the big thing is, that's the spotlight on him all of last year. Now, can he kind of, I don't want to say turn it off, but, can he kind of transition that into just being a good NHL player, not the gay NHL player, just a really good NHL player. And that's going to be the big challenge for him. He has impressed everywhere he's been so far this year, both in development camp and he's looked strong in the rookie showcase so far, playing alongside Spencer Stastny. So that is going to be something that we watch out for. He's going to probably get a crack at Milwaukee this year, probably somewhere on the bottom two lines, but I would definitely say his ceiling has risen based on his performance over the last year.
Awesome. Good to know. And that's just about all the questions I have for Nashville.
Yeah. Well, if you're not done with us quite yet, and you want to have more hockey, go and make your second listen of the day Locked On NHL. Our Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. You can stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Robyn, before we go, I want one bold take from you on the Arizona Coyotes this year. It can be a player, can be where you think they'll finish, just a crazy something that you think is going to happen. What's a bold prediction you have for this upcoming season?
I'm going to make the same prediction I made last year, except I think this year there's a higher chance of it actually happening.
Okay.
And that's the Arizona Coyotes will win the Tank Hard for Bedard sweepstakes.
All right.
They're going to get Connor Bedard.
That's if that happens, I can see the fortunes changing in Arizona very, very fast. You can rake this tank. I don't think the Coyotes are going to finish last in the Central. I really don't. I think.
I mean, did I say they were gonna? I didn't say they were gonna finish last. I said they're gonna win the.
Oh no! I mean, two different things.
Because let's be real, like Chicago is gonna be bad.
Yeah, and look, we know what they can do when they want to win a Stanley Cup. Just think of what they do when they want to suck very, very badly. They are doing all the right moves this offseason to make that happen. But
oh yeah.
But no, I mean, I think like I said before, I like the way this Coyotes team is built. Obviously, you're not going to be great this year, but I do like the kind of the young talent on the team. I like kind of the wily mix of veterans in there, wily because you're the Coyotes.
Yeah.
I like Gosh Despair. I love the addition of Patrick Nemeth. As a closet Red Wings fan, I loved him back in Detroit. Clayton Keller, I think, is one of the more underrated players in the NHL. And I just think there's something there. Like, there's enough of a young talent that I think, I think you guys can kind of be that fringe team that goes out and sort of surprises a few teams this year, on a zany Saturday night, you knock off Tampa, knock off Colorado, take them by surprise. I get that vibe from you guys this year.
I mean, they did a little bit of that last year. Yeah. Even though they ended up finishing second to last in the league, there were a couple games in which your goaltender Karel Vejmelka would have a 450 save game, and they would go ahead and beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 1-0. Mm-hmm. It just came out of nowhere. It's what? Where did this come from?
Yeah. It was the vibe. It brought back, the first 5 years of Preds hockey. I remember when it was we would suck for weeks and then somehow go out and beat the Red Wings 6-1 or something like that. Just an absolutely out of nowhere game.
Yeah. And I think the idea, a lot of people were saying that this team won't be as bad as last year's team, which is good because that was hard. Emotionally, mentally, physically, it was just hard to watch the Coyotes last year. I'm not saying it's not going to be hard this year for the Coyotes fans listening, but it's still going to be hard because they're still going to be bad. But there's a lot more things to look forward to as the pieces start getting put together. Obviously, you mentioned Dylan Genther's name, and I mentioned it earlier. Probably won't play this year. But we'll see a decent amount of him in the preseason, which is I'm excited for. Especially now since I'm up here, I get to see him at training camp and then head down to Tucson to watch him in one of the preseason games.
Yeah. Well, we are cheering for the Coyotes this year. Again, we want to see you guys do well. We love to see hockey thrive in non-traditional markets. Please, yeah. Just please, whatever you do, don't ruin another one of our seasons. I don't know if we can take it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to at least give it to the Coyotes because that was their last game at Gila River. So,
Yeah.
You had to at least give that one. But
we won't, but we appreciate it. Robyn, for our listeners, why don't you go ahead and let us know where we can find your work, where we can listen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find the Locked On Coyotes podcast everywhere you get your podcast: Apple, Google, Spotify. If you have a Roku device, you can also find us on the KPNX 12 News app. We're definitely find that also on the 12 News mobile apps as well. I myself am at Robyn_Leano, and the Locked On Coyotes Twitter is at LO_Coyotes.
I'm Nick Morgan. You can find my work at ontheforecheck.com. You can also listen to me and my co-host Ann Kimmel every weekday on the Locked On Predators Network. Exactly what Robyn said. Find us wherever you get your podcast. Robyn, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Hope to see you more this season.
Absolutely. Thanks.